Going live in 3, 2, 1. And hey, we're live. Thanks for checking out another one of my streams, everybody. Um, Excuse my worn out look. My eyes are a little allergy ridden this week, so I kind of look more tired than usual, but I'm also pretty tired too. But I wanted to do a video because it's been a while since I did an update on the Data OS, my work on my side project. So I wanted to kind of just go over the highlights from the past month and yeah, just talk to everybody about what I've been up to. So let's jump right in. So just if anyone's not familiar with the Daedalus OS, I've got it open sourced here on GitHub. It's actually pretty popular, 5.2 thousand stars. I'm very happy for everyone that supports me with those stars. Not that they do anything. They're internet points, which are of course the best kind of points, the most useless for the most part. And then if you see here that my website is dustinbrett.com, if we were to go there right now, it'll look like this. And this is Data OS, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you've seen me work on this over the last year and a half, I guess it's been. And it's gotten to a pretty good point right now. And yeah, let's just kind of dive into some of the things I've done recently. So I'm going to open up the dev tools here, and we're just kind of pick it apart basically a little bit. The first thing I want to talk about is responsive images. I've done a lot of work on making the images more responsive so that on, let's say, mobile, like my S21, my phone, its dots per inch resolution is actually 3x versus a desktop, which is 1x. So if I were to look at a 48 pixel by 48 pixel width image on my desktop, it'll show me the 48 pixel version. But if I were to look at that on my phone, it knows that it wants to try to triple the DPI essentially, and it would like to try to request an image that's essentially 3 times that size. Ideally, that's what it would like. And there's the ability with the browser to provide those images and to have the picture look a little bit better on the phone, basically. And that's what I've managed to do here, if you see here. So there's several ways that I've done responsive images, and there's still more to come that I'm kind of waiting for better support from browsers and servers and that kind of thing, and we'll get into that a little bit. But basically, it's this picture element here. So everyone's familiar with the old image source element. That's the basic one. And I've added a lot of different tags to this from modern browser features. We can go over those quick. But the addition of wrapping it all within this picture element allows it to be more responsive. So that by adding these source elements, you can kind of say different things about how you want the images to load. So the first one I have is this a media tag, basically like a media query for CSS, where it'll try to show you different things based on what your browser is set up with in your environment, basically. So if you happen to have a minimum resolution of at least 2.01, which is basically my way of saying greater than 2, and also there's a Safari version called min device pixel ratio, and I've also used the same 2.01 number. Without the X here, I believe is not necessary the X, although I'm going to double check that, but I think it's not necessary. And then I specify the image here. You can't see it because of my picture. Let me try to scroll. How can I make this more visible? Let me move it over here just so it's visible. Come on down here. All right, let me move the image up. Get out of the way, image. You're in the way. There. So this is the main one I'm talking about here. And as you see here, and then under the source set, instead of just source like you typically do with image, I can specify the same image, but at 144 by 144. So in the case of me viewing this on a desktop, it's going to load this image here. And also the image one is the fallback. So in this case, it's using a format called .png, or we'll ignore the dot, but the file format is PNG, which is a type of image format that's kind of more supported than more modern browsers, and pretty good modern support you get with this WebP. So that's the one that the main one I'm using. It gets better compression, so it's like smaller file sizes for essentially the same visual quality. I've gone with lossless for all of my source images, converting them to smaller. And what you get with lossless instead of lossy is that it essentially tries to maintain the exact same look. Basically, you don't lose any quality. So I've done that, and then I've just focused on the format and different other different methods to do compression, such as a tool I use called File Optimizer, which is just kind of a conglomerate of a bunch of other tools that takes the image and kind of removes metadata and does a bunch of different tricks to it to try to get a couple of little bites here and there. So that's the basics of these source, and there's 3 source tags, but they're all the same. They're just like minimum resolution of the 2 version, the 1, and then the 3. Sorry, 3 and 2 and 1. And there's actually a new syntax you can use for media queries where I could have just said, I could do it like this: resolution is greater than 2x. That's actually a valid media query, but only for more recent versions of Chrome and possibly a few other browsers, but it's not as widely supported. So even though I prefer this syntax, I decided to go with min resolution, and and add a very, like only a 1% increase to use the larger images, basically, to avoid any kind of resizing by the browser whenever possible. And if there's any kind of resizing by the browser, I prefer it to be a bigger image becoming smaller. That usually looks a little bit better than a smaller image where the browser tries to make it bigger. So that's where these images come in handy to kind of specify how you want it to go, and it gives you more control, basically. So that's one part of it. Another part of it here, let's get into the tag features that I have on the image itself. Another tricky thing here is that most of the styling and all of these tags are basically relevant to picture too. So you don't, even though I wrapped it in this picture parent element, I don't have to reference the picture for styling or any other thing else. I can just talk about this image here, which is kind of like a child of the picture and the source and all this. This is all like a package here. It's basically all there is one picture, and then it's got your sources. And another cool thing with source too is also you can specify type. So you see here I specified WebP, but if I wanted, I could convert to other formats. And I actually played with this for a little bit. There's another newer format called AVIF, AVIF for short, I was calling it. And I'd made some pretty nice AVIF files, but then I kind of figured out in the end that for thumbnails, for the kind of files that I'm making that are mostly icons, it actually is better to use WebP, basically. So I just decided, let's just use WebP. It's got better support anyways, and I've just skipped AVIF for now until it works better. I mean, it may never work better for my use case, so I don't think it's that AVIF is always better than WebP, at least in my experience. What else we got? Back to this image tag here. So then some of the other things I got on it, decoding async. I mean, these aren't necessarily responsive things, so I guess we won't get into too much of this. Source set. So when we go to image and we talk about source, we usually know, okay, source, you know that one. So this is like the fallback, final fallback. But there's also a source set on the image tag itself. And then within that, there's another way to specify the resolution. So this string here has 3 URLs in it. The first one is the fallback one, but then you'll see here the other two have the URL space and then 2x to say for 2x resolution and 3x. And it works similar to how source is, but ideally I prefer that it would go to these source elements because that's the most modern one and that's the one that I have the most control over. So that's one part of responsive images. Actually, that's the main part. I don't want to dive into the code today, but I also have some event handlers here if the image gets any errors along the way. So let's say if for some reason the higher resolution image isn't found, it'll try to fall back down to those other sources as well. That's another method of fallback that's actually not part of the picture element by default, but you do have the ability to add your own error handlers, and that's how I've handled that. And then I have a few links here we can just quickly go to just so you have some good sources. So this is a good source I use for everything, MDN Web Docs. They're from mozilla.org, and this is essentially the gospel for how to make a website and how JavaScript, HTML, and CSS work, in my opinion. I mean, the real gospel, I guess, I think I have a link. I don't have any links, but there's this other thing called W3, the W3 organization. These are the gospel guys, actually. They have some specs here, and the specifications of like, that the browsers go off of. So the browser maker will actually say, okay, well, what does W3 say that this should work like? And then they kind of improvise and do their own thing. I mean, that's my understanding of it. There's actually a lot more going on there. But anyways, this website, this page right here, responsive images with on MDN, has a lot of information. You see here, this goes in, and there's a ton of links that go into more depth about it. But you'll see here that they have some of the things I've used, like the source set versus source. So you can kind of give a set of images. A lot of this stuff exists in CSS as well. So that's another thing you can do. Another piece of the responsive image I wanted to get into is preloading. So if we get into the head here of our document, I've also added these link headers. So these links allow you to preload images that I know are going to be loaded. So like these 5 images here are essentially the 4 icons plus the shortcut image. And I know that these images are going to load before the page knows, essentially, because the page fully loads with the OS, and then it looks at the desktop file system, sees the 4 shortcuts, figures out what they are, then it goes to render them and makes the HTML. But beforehand, I already have kind of figured out that I know it's going to be these 5 images. I put that in. It's not completely hard-coded. It scans it every time I build. So if I do make a new desktop icon, this will change. But it's somewhat hard-coded into the HTML at build time. Anyways, these link elements also have the ability to add image source set. So I can do the same kind of thing where I can have the fallbacks to the 2x and the 3x. And these are considered preload. So if you go into the network here, is there anything else about this? I also set fetch priority. This is kind of a newer thing. Not a lot of browsers support this yet, but that's another thing to even more so say that not only is this a preload, but do it right now. This image is coming, you know. At least that's my interpretation of it. So if we refresh here and we see as the page loads, you'll see these 5 images here that are the preloads. They've essentially loaded before all the JavaScript has loaded to even say what's going to happen. And then here the requests happen again. But it's essentially cached, I believe. There is caching going on, so it's not so bad. And I'm also serving all these things off Cloudflare. So if you see the protocol, this is using HTTP 3, which is pretty darn fast, honestly. And like I say, it's preloading all these images. So my page is actually very fast. And there's one other piece I've been experimenting with. It didn't work out, unfortunately, is there's another thing you can add where you can put a link header here in your response. So on my web server where I host these files, I essentially set up an HTTP header that I tell Cloudflare, this link header says all my preloads ahead of time. And then Cloudflare is supposed to detect that, and its CDN, as it's serving the files, essentially also sends to the browser an HTTP 103 request that tells it to download the image. Now, the problem I had when I tried to figure out how to do all this, I got it basically working except for the point where it couldn't load the image I wanted to, because at that stage of loading, it doesn't yet know the resolution. So if I wanted to go with responsive images, I essentially can't do these 103 early hints yet, because there's no way beforehand to say, oh, this is 3x DPI, so we want to load the 144 by 144 image. It doesn't know that yet because it hasn't gotten that far, essentially, is my understanding. But actually, on that note, I started digging into like the link header and what it could possibly do. I'm not sure exactly if early hints are kind of adopting it or being like, hey, let's use the link header for what we want to use, because I see the spec going back a couple years, but early hints seems kind of new. Anyways, it seems like media query is possible on those link headers. I couldn't get it to work, but if Cloudflare at some point will support media queries or image source set on the link headers, then I could have responsive images even faster, and that would actually be quite the speed boost. Like if you go to Cloudflare's website and you believe their claims here, early hints, how Cloudflare can improve your website load by 30%. And I think it's legit, essentially, because those are my slowest images. These, like this image here, brain, is the biggest one, and it's essentially called the LCP, the longest content painful or something like that. It's the thing that takes the longest to load before the page is considered loaded, basically. Which is odd because it's not even the biggest image. I don't know why it always picks that one, but it seems to always be the LCP anyways. I'm hoping once early hints becomes more popular, this will be better. And there's different ways you can test your website. This is a cool site here, GT Metrics, I use sometimes. There's another one called webpagetest.org, I think, which is another interesting one. But I do pretty good on this one. I feel like they use browser Chrome 93, and actually the link preloads, I believe, are where we're a newer version of Chrome, or the fetch priority, sorry, is a newer version of Chrome. So I'm almost wondering if I can get 100% on this once they switch to 103 and give me fetch priority as well. But on a good day, I can get 99. Here we go. So I got 99. That's pretty good. On a good day, I can get under 500 milliseconds too for this LCP as well. But this is a pretty good result. They essentially don't even have any real suggestions for me as to what else to do. I've essentially done everything. Some of these things here where they say, they want me to increase the caching policy. It's only 7 days. Well, I change the site all the time. Enormous payloads. Avoid enormous. Well, yeah, none of these are enormous. The whole page is tiny. Execution time, oh no, 90 milliseconds. I think I'll be okay with that. And then the unused JavaScript, that's in their opinion. I mean, most of the stuff that I allow to load is used quite quick, or it's going to be used. If you want to do anything on my site, I know that's going to load, so I'm okay to load that unnecessary JavaScript. So yeah, that being said, that's some of the responsiveness. Here's another cool one I did that I just remembered is now, so you see my cursor here. Can you see it in the stream? Probably, yeah. One thing I added is that if you hover the mouse over the start button, I've added another preload. So watch, I hover over, boom. You see in the network request here, before I actually did anything, I didn't click anything. I just moved my cursor over the start button. I've decided that means, hey, they're probably going to open the start menu, and I preload all the start menu icons as well. And that, I think, makes the start menu open a little snappier, I feel. So now if I were to open the start menu here, you'll see that it loads, and those images are the ones that it did load. And that's, again, another thing I do at build time where I scan the folder and I know, okay, these are the icons, and I figure out what they're going to be. But that's another one where I'm doing dynamic link headers. I do dump them in. If you see here now, they're in the head. They weren't there originally, but that's something that happens after the fact once the page is already loaded. That's why they've kind of gone to the bottom of the head element here within the HTML. And they work just the same way. They also have source set and type and everything. So I think that I've gone through the responsive images. Let's move on to the next thing. So another cool one here. This is something that I had a lot of memories about, a game called DXBall. Now, I can't remember what this is based on. There's like a really popular game. Let's quickly look up DXBall and just see if they mention it. Yeah, it's actually, they still make the game. Um, what it's Breakout. Yeah, if you guys know, if people know Breakout from Atari or that kind of thing, this was a classic game. But I remember playing this on like Windows 95 with my mom, kind of thing, back in the day when I was just a kid. And I found that somebody, credit where credit is due. Although it's interesting how I found this. I just randomly remembered DXBall one day, and I was like, I'm gonna type DXBall JavaScript into Google and see what happens. And I found this. If you see here, this is in Russian. I don't even like. We'd have to translate this. I've translated it before and found the site. It's that the site doesn't even exist anymore. It's down. So I'm lucky I found the blog post and I knew about it now, because it'd be hard to find. I probably would have just said, "Oh, and it didn't work," if it was a 404. But I knew that when at one point it was up, so I saw it. Anyways, this guy went hardcore to kind of decode DXBall and turn it into JavaScript, and I was able to kind of repair it enough to get it going here. It had some issues, and I've kind of solved most of them. So yeah, here's DXBall essentially, and you could just play basically like how I remember playing it as a kid, and it works pretty decent. Oh man, I have the volume really low. Oh, I lost one there. Oh no, wait, what happened there? Why did I switch levels? I think I hit the thing that lets me go to the next level maybe. Oh, that time I just died. Yeah, I'm almost out of lives here. Oh, I can get a 1 life extra. Oh, nice. And one other cool thing with this is I also fixed the scoring system, so it'll actually remember scores. So let me just lose here if I can. It's so hard for me to lose. There we go. I lost. So now you got your scoreboard here, and I can put my name, Dustin. So I scored 710, and then I could play again. It'll remember it. But if I close this, I refresh the page. Let's say I come back 10 years later. Oops, I opened the wrong app here. Let's open the right app. We open DXBall again, and presumably it's going to have remembered it. There's no way to go to scores, so we have to play one more time. We'll just play quick here. I'll hit all these ones. Nice. And oh wait, we have to put my name in DB. There we go. So we had the Dustin score there, and now we have the other one. So you could kind of play with your friends and keep the score there and everything. And it's a fun game. You can play it in full screen too. And I don't know how many levels it has. I haven't gotten that far in it, but it's got the sound effects, and like I said, it's got the game save, and I thought it was a pretty cool one. What's next? Easter eggs. This is one I thought was fun. So I've actually gone over some of this before. Here's another thing. If you right click start button, you can go to run. And this is another way you can get to terminal. You can type terminal in here. Or I've also done like some shortcuts and stuff. So you could also say CMD command, and that'll be treated as it. Or you can press shift F10. Or you can go to the start menu and go terminal. And all of these can allow you to launch the sheep. And that'll give us a sheep here somewhere. Here's the sheep. Oh, let me try to catch him in the air. I got him. There's the sheep right there. And another way, you can also launch the sheep from that start menu here. If it could just say sheep, that should give us another sheep somewhere. There's another sheep. So those are the typical ways to load the sheep, if people knew. And now the new Easter egg sheep that I've added is if you go to the clock here and you click it 7 times, we'll do it together here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There should be a sheep that appears. Ah, there he goes. He's right here. And so let's just click that a bunch of times. I'm just clicking it, I don't know how many times here, and let's see. Because I have another Easter egg with an Easter egg. Here we go. A 1 in 7 chance of a penguin appearing. I've added this little penguin guy here. Get on the ground, guy. There, he's on the ground. So we have a little penguin as well. And these are fun little characters. They can interact with the windows as well. If we put the penguin up here, put the sheep up here, and they can all be on the window. And if you give them enough time, they'll jump off as well. But these aren't my creation, these sheep. These are from a guy who made this web sheep. It's another fun app, and this is actually from Windows again, a Windows 95 app that this guy ported to JavaScript, and I've kind of thought, hey, it's perfect for my app, I thought. So that's one of the Easter eggs, and another little Easter egg is if you right-click the menu here and go to Backgrounds, there's Vanta Waves, which is what we're checking out now. If you click it again, nothing happens. Okay, that's the first click. Now, if you go in again and click Vanta Waves, it goes into like a wireframe mode, which I thought was kind of cool. And then you can be in wireframe mode. And if you refresh and come back, you're still in wireframe mode. You lost your sheep, but you can double click again to get your sheep back. The first one's always a sheep. I made that rule. But the next one could be the penguin. You never know. I got 2 sheep though. So there's a couple of fun Easter eggs I put in there. Let's put our wallpaper back to the old Vanta. And what's next? What's another little one I did? This one's kind of minor, but it's a little fun. Is the clock here on the bottom right. If you people probably don't know, but before it used to be HTML markup, and now what I've done is I've converted it into a canvas actually. So if you see here the clock, that's the clock right now. It is essentially an off-screen canvas that I'm running in a web worker where I draw to the canvas the time every time. And the clock has a lot of complexity too, actually. It's synced with the system. Every second it resyncs. It's also able to sync to an NTP server via WebSockets, I believe, via another a service that's hosted. That's actually a conglomerate of several NTP servers. So it can actually have very accurate time if you wanted to. But all of that too, and it's on an off-screen canvas. And what does that get us? It doesn't get us much, but one confusing thing it gets us is that if the app is frozen, like let's say one of the programs you run is frozen, the clock will keep going and the wallpaper will keep going because they're now both on off-screen canvases. So my page is a lot harder to freeze completely, but it can still be frozen in a way where you're like, why is this part working but this part's not? Still, it's kind of cool, and I would hope one day to move everything to off-screen canvases, and then essentially no one piece can freeze everything. That would be a nice hope that I'm working on. But I don't have any future plans necessarily for that at the moment. Another thing I've added here in the start menu, if you see here, there's 2 more buttons now, pictures, which leads to my pictures that already existed before, and videos here I've added, which leads to the videos that I already had before. Those are some just kind of shortcuts. The videos here are mostly my YouTube videos that play in the YouTube streaming player, and my pictures are from all sorts of stuff, like my travels. One day I hope to do a video about my travels, but if you want to check out the pictures here, I've been to 50 countries, and I got like 38 of them in these pictures here. Most of these folders are countries, and I've gone to various ones, and usually did not too much, just kind of chilled out. But it was a lot of fun anyway, so if you want to check those out before I do a video one day about that. I have a lot of blog posts about it too. Honestly, that's how this started, was blog posts about that. So I have a bunch of years of when I did do my travels and just kind of going to places, going to latitude 000 and random stuff like that. Anyways, that's those shortcuts to that. What's next on the list? Very minor one that I renamed. This used to be called wallpaper, but I decided it makes more sense to call it background. That's more like in tune with the styling here. And on the note of backgrounds and wallpapers, if you see my background here, this craziness going on the screen, that's actually my new screen. Like, I work over here on the couch often on my laptop, and I have this going, playing streaming music, and with that video. That's all my website. That looks like, if you see, you can see icons there. You can see a start menu. You think, oh, he's got a computer running with some kind of crazy stuff. That's just my website that I run all the time. So now I have my website on basically all the time, running streaming. So how I do that, I go to dustinbrett.com. I open the Dustin folder, the music folder, and this is my playlist that I like to listen to. Soma FM's Groove Salad Classic from about 2 decades ago. That's what I used to listen to. That boots up in Winamp. Oftentimes I'll switch the skin to my favorite SpyAmp Pro. I'm actually going to set this to remember the skin setting in the playlist setting in the future. So you can just open Winamp and it'll be whatever these pieces you had, like the files you had loaded in the skin you had set. Anyways, I do this every day just for the heck of it. Then I close this folder. Then I open up the Milk Drop add-on, which is actually powered by this thing called Butter Churn. And then the last step, I right-click this and I set it to desktop mode. And then it takes over the whole desktop, just like it's doing back there. And I kind of just let it play, and I'm sure on the stream it's going to have a heck of a pixelation time with this, so I won't play it for too long. But that's the basics of it. If I close Winamp, it just goes back to how it used to be before. But yeah, I love to play that all the time, and it's got like hundreds of presets, and I didn't make those presets, obviously. I'm not that skilled, but I put it together for everybody. And then one last thing, completely random, last of the list, is TIFF support. If people know .tif or .tiff files, I've added TIFF support. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. But you can open up TIFF files. Here's a TIFF file. It's not normal to be able to open TIFF files in the browser, but it's something from a library I used called UTIFF that has fast and advanced TIFF decoder. So I figured, hey, I'll let my photo viewer be able to play TIFF. I'm just going to keep adding photos formats until it essentially supports every format. And I hope to get there one day. And yeah, that's about it. I won't bore anybody with any more details. These are my to-dones. This is my to-dos. You see the whiteboard there. I've got a few more things that are my essentials, and then I'm going to start bringing stuff back down. And we'll do this again next month with some more cool features, I hope. Thanks for checking out my video. If you liked it, please throw me a like. If you want to support me, motivate me, check out what's going on, keep track of what's going on, then subscribe. I recommend it. I've heard good things from others. Just joking about that, but it'd be nice if you did, so feel free. Anyways, I'm going to end the stream there, so thanks for checking it out. Hope you guys had fun. Goodbye.